welcome to another Looney Tunes review video. If you are new to the channel, make sure you subscribe to follow my journey to review all 1000 classic Looney Tunes shorts and give this video a like as well. So this is a review for Prehistoric Porky, released in 1940. It's the 301st in the series, and it's directed by Bob Clampett. You can find this on the Looney Tunes Golden Collection Volume 5 DVD set, on the Porky Pig 101 DVD set, and there is a HD version out there via streaming. Now, in case you haven't seen this one, I can't share the full thing here due to copyright on YouTube, but essentially we go back 1 billion trillion years ago, according to this short, where we see some dinosaur stuff in the beginning. We then see Porky, who's, hey, how about that? He's actually the star of his very own short for once in a long time. He decides he needs a new set of clothes, fur coat, whatever, and he goes out and tries to get one. So yeah, pretty straightforward. Now, first thing you're going to see is a re-edit of the original audio commentary I did before I had to take that down, and there's not really much there. I just thought I'd pare it down to what I call the bare essentials in that one, because I'm going to go through some of the references here that I did point to in the commentary, but I want to elaborate further. So, without further ado, let's go through the original commentary. We're going back a long time ago, and it's interesting that this particular short came out the same year Fantasia did, where it had that dinosaur segment. Now, obviously it's apple and oranges, because Disney was going for realism, and here it's more just, for a bit of humor. Like here, where, you'd see the extreme, you know what to expect. I thought it was interesting just comparing the two dinosaur sections and how wildly different they are. And what's this? We actually see Porky Pig just a little over a minute. Yeah, strangely enough, after so many shorts where Clampett seemingly sidelined Porky as much as possible, be it in bookends or maybe just a little cameo, and that was that. This one, he's back to being in the full cartoon, more or less. But I do like that dinosaur gag where you see his little head and then it pans back, and yeah. Although this gag probably goes on a bit too long, but that's alright. So yeah, we get a little chase scene at the end, and then we get the whole thing about I can get a few wholesale. Love this bit of animation here, by the way, just look at his face. Pretty good. And it's so great to see this in high definition as well. I mean, it's not terrible on DVD or anything, but you can just sort of make out the details a little better, at least I think so. And yeah, we get the wholesale joke, and that's pretty much it. And we end there. Yeah, so those are my original thoughts, and I did actually say more at the time, but a lot of them were to do with some of the references, and I thought it'd be better if I just do that fresh. So let's go through some of these references. So that whole part where we see, hello everybody.
Hello everybody.
Now that's a reference to Kate Smith, and she was in a film called Hello Everybody. That was released in 1933, and she's perhaps most well known for her rendition of the song God Bless America. And she's kind of a controversial figure now, and I'm not going to really get into that, but that's basically what the reference is. Now here's someone a lot of you may actually know who this is, but without actually realizing, especially if you've seen Alice in Wonderland, the 1951 Disney classic. But that vulture that starts singing, that's sung in the style of Jerry Colonna, and he was a comedian and musician, and he would basically, one of his trademarks when he was actually singing would be stretching a note to a really, really long length. Now, if you've seen the Disney short within the compilation film Make My Music called Casey and the Bat, Jerry Colonna himself actually narrates that one, and here it's definitely not Jerry Colonna, but in the Disney short, you can actually hear one part where he stretches out a note. So if you want a good idea of what he was able to do, it's basically that. And of course, that song, Those Were Wonderful Days, is what they were singing here. That's actually, the title of a Merry Melody short that was done a few years earlier. Later on, we see someone who's been parodied a few times in Looney Tunes, and is kind of obscure today, but his name is Ned Sparks, and he was an actor who had a very serious-looking face. He had a very monotone voice, which of course was ripe for parody, and that's why he just looks, really serious here, getting hit and all that. Now that magazine, I mean, for those of you following the channel, I love to freeze frame this sort of stuff because there's a few good things here. I mean, first of all, Expire magazine is a pretty clever parody, I have to say, to the to Esquire magazine, and this particular cover, you can see it's got a parody of Tony Galento. He was actually previously parodied in Africa Squeaks as a gorilla, but he was basically a boxer at the time, and he was, getting on the older side by now. He would retire in about a year or two after this short, and, he, of course, had the body that was ripe for parody. And funnily enough, yeah, he even, for publicity purposes, actually boxed a kangaroo. So, yeah, how about that? But the cover also features parody names of the staffers at the time. I mean, my favorite, of course, is Cobb Clampett. So it's just, really weird. But those names are all pretty funny there. And if you look on the very bottom, and this is why I like looking at these HD versions as opposed to standard def, because you do miss out this sort of stuff. But apparently within we're going to see some Looney Tunes and Merry Melodies. So I guess there were comic strips in there. So how about that? Oh, and the quote-unquote punchline, because it's not really punchline. I think this short just ends, and I'll get into that in a moment. But when the saber-toothed tiger creature says, "I can get it for you wholesale,"
I can get it for you wholesale.
That is a title of a 1937 novel of the same name, and later on it'd be perhaps more famous as a musical that starred a very young Barbra Streisand in its first run, and that's of course in the 1960s. I mean, she's older, but she's not that old. It's definitely 1960s there. But I don't see any other references to that. So if I got that wrong, definitely let me know in the comments below. So those were the references. I mean, look, this particular short, I don't know if this specific short gave Clampett the idea for being in Cecil later, or maybe it was from Fantasia, because as I mentioned in the commentary extract, that Fantasia came around this time, so you got this nice little contrast of the two different styles going on, the hyperrealism of what Disney were doing, and of course, the lower budgeted Porky unit. But later on, once Bob Clampett leaves the Schlesinger studio, he would, first of all, direct one short at a different studio. Apparently he was supposed to do more, but that didn't quite work out. And then he would do the Time for Beanie puppet show, and later on that would be adapted as an animated series in the early 60s. So clearly, clearly Clampett had a thing for dinosaurs, and hey, who can blame him? I mean, I had a thing for dinosaurs when I was younger, but I'm just wondering if this was actually a spark for his, for the creation that would come much later on. But going through the short itself, of course, I love how it opens up the whole ridiculous 1 billion trillion BC, a long time ago. Haha. But listen to the sound effects in the background once we see the establishing shot. Now, I wonder if the sound effects there, that's just Mel Blanc just, wiggling his head and letting his cheeks be all loose, that kind of thing, And it's the same sound effect that would be used later on a few times. So I wonder if Treg Brown just recorded that once and just reused it as a sound effect whenever they needed someone to do that. Or, I mean, Mel Blanc was pretty talented, so maybe he just kept doing it when required. But either way, I just like the ridiculous sound effect and background.
And I've never been so humiliated in all my life.
And look, some of the gags you can see coming, but you're like, you know what? Whatever. It's still pretty funny. Like the dinosaur that's coming up, all aggressive and mean. There's going to be some kind of a Avery-esque cop-out. And of course, we get the whole Kate Smith thing. Now, looking at Porky Pig's cave, it says it goes 1, 2, 3.5, and I wonder if that 3.5 part is referring to the line, I'm only 3.5 years old. That was said on the Abbott and Costello radio program. But you hear that line all the time in Looney Tunes. I'm only 3.5 years old. Clampett would use that quite a bit, but I would guess that was what's that. But I would guess that is what that is referring to. And speaking of nice gags, we get this nice little gag where you think there's this little dinosaur, and it's just this completely pointless and ridiculous thing where it's just got this little house and his head's there, and then you got the whole body, and like, okay. You know, I thought that was pretty funny. I did think the whole thing involving the actual tail does go on a bit too long. I felt it's like, yeah, we get the point kind of thing. You know, it takes up a lot of the cartoon. I don't know if it was just Clampett stalling for time, but yeah, I just felt that, yeah, the gag just went on a bit too long. But can't stay mad at Clampett though. The dinosaur is pretty cute after all, you know. But you do have to wonder why Porky didn't just bring the dinosaur with him when, you know, hunting for a new fur coat. And speaking of which, if we go back to the magazine, if you look inside, I love the design of the caveman, just looking very dapper in his stripes and drawn kind of weirdly in the bottom part. And I'll let you, you know, figure that part out for yourselves as to what I mean. But I also like the caveman at the beach. Just, I wonder who drew that. If you guys know who actually drew those two, let me know. I mean, he was the background painter, drawing this as a background, and then he's like, oh, good, I can actually draw an actual human figure for once. But anyway, you can let me know if you know. So then we see Porky go off to try and find a fur coat. You know, of course, he's going to clobber an animal to death, basically, and, you know, take the skin, you know, which pretty gruesome if you think about it, you know. But anyway, you know, this was 1 billion trillion years ago. They weren't as civilized, I guess. But if you look at the dinosaur that approaches Porky first, such a weird design. I mean, it's like a T-Rex, but it's not, because it's got all the fingers. It's, you know, very bizarre. Again, compare it to what they did in Fantasia, where they had the more accurate depiction of Tyrannosaurus, at least based on what information was available at the time in regards to paleontology. But hey, Porky doesn't give a crap in this one. He's very strong. He just, you know, everything seems to be feared by him, and he just bashes them up. Of course, later on when Porky actually tries to, you know, kill that cub for its skin, you know, of course the cub doesn't seem to be afraid of Porky. But anyway, I do like the look of Porky when he's trying to, I guess, try on the cub's skin, and very weird description. But anyway, I like that drawing there, and the timing of the actual club by the cub is really, really good. And again, Clampett would just takes elements like that and then would just perfect them once he takes over the Avery unit later on. You know, out of all the animals, I mean, the most realistic ones, I mean, you got the vulture in the beginning, yeah, but in terms of the prehistoric animals, that saber-tooth definitely looks the more realistic, and I do like whoever animated that. I would say definitely paid a bit more attention in terms of how animals actually move and how they probably would look back then versus just whatever. I know, it's just a cartoon, but I just found it interesting that you got these different animators interpreting this in different ways. And one final thing, as a grown-up, you know, I really wish you can do what Porky does, and when you get bills in the mail, you just rip it up and they just go away. Well, yeah, we got to pay our bills. But in any case, look, what do I think of this one? It's definitely one of the stronger Porkies of 1940 because, again, you can see that he kind of meanders a little bit. He'll make some strong Porky shorts, but then he'll focus on other things and have Porky basically cameoing in his own short. But this one's a good one. It ends abruptly, and which is pretty annoying. Like, there's no real punchline here. It's just he just says that funny line, and that it just ends. Like, there's no real resolution here. But anyway, aside from that, though, you know, this one gets a nice 7 out of 10 for me. It's funny. Got some great stuff in terms of animation, in terms of establishing shots, the mood, everything. But yeah, if it wasn't for the ending and that tail wag gag taking way too long, I'd probably score a little bit higher. But you could do worse. This one's a fun one to watch. But that'll do it for this one. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, take care.